Welcome to another episode of the Bullshit Filter. So called because we filter the bullshit that
Yes, we do.
is happening out there. Try and just get in there, like, swimming through it.
Actually,
And
I think the correct gesture at this point is try not to be, overwhelmed by it. It's like,
mm,
we're drowning in BS. But anyway,
my
I
name is
apologize.
Cameron. Your name is Ray.
Yeah.
I have to remind you of that because you normally taking quite a few gummies before we start the show.
And I lost
Uh,
my name tag. So thank you
your
for
name
reminding
badge.
me. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Ray, there's so much bullshit going around right now.
Yeah.
And it's coming from all sides, but the thing that has amused me the most in recent weeks
Yeah.
is that most of the bullshit I see, I mean, it's a lot of it's coming from Trump and Musk, which you just expect.
Right.
So that's really neither here nor there. But a lot of what I see, it's coming from people online who think they know what's going on.
Right.
Particularly with Trump and Putin and Ukraine and Zelensky and that whole story.
Yeah.
And it's amusing to me to see how confident they are in their illusion that they know what's going on. I hear them go, "Oh, Trump's fallen for, Putin's propaganda." When
Right.
actually these people have fallen for the Biden administration's propaganda over the last couple of years.
Hmm.
Not to say that Trump is right either.
Right.
He's doing some of the right things, but for the wrong reasons. But the
Hmm.
people who think he's doing those think he's doing the wrong things for the wrong reasons. And it's all
Right.
just, oh, where do we fucking start with all of
And
this? But
yeah, and he's lying throughout. Whether he's doing the right thing or the wrong thing, he lies because I think
yeah,
it's his go-to, if you will.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's he lives in his own little fantasy world. But
Yeah.
just a quick reminder for people who don't listen to the show or have listened to the show but
Hmm.
have forgotten.
Right.
Putin didn't start the war with Ukraine, but neither did Zelensky.
Right.
The USA started it by overthrowing the government of Ukraine, not
Hmm.
once, but twice in the last 21 years. First
Right.
in 2004, second in 2014, which led to Russia invading Georgia and Crimea, and then the Donbass conflict, which they supported, and then finally the Ukraine invasion in early 2022, because they did it to protect their borders. Now, I'm not saying it's
Yes.
justified. I'm not saying
Right.
I agree with it. I'm just the messenger boy. I'm
Right.
explaining from their perspective why they did it.
Hmm.
It's not because of Putin's desire to rebuild the Russian Empire or imperialism and then all of that kind of bullshit that I hear people trot out. No, it's because the US were taking over Ukraine covertly,
Hmm.
but Russia knew what was going on
Right.
and tried to stop it after the 2004 overthrow of the Ukrainian government and the government of Ukraine in 2004 was sort of pro-Russian. It was overthrown and installed with a pro-Western government.
Right.
They had elections and they got voted out, and there was a new pro-Russian government that was elected in.
Hmm.
Then the US overthrew that one in 2014 and installed another pro-Western government, which eventually led to Zelensky. And uh, you know, for the
Yeah.
people who think Ukraine wanted to join NATO, they didn't until the US overthrew the government of Ukraine. And
And put
then
the
the
right
new
person.
government
Yes.
that was
Yes.
installed by the US
Yeah.
wanted to join NATO. We've done shows about this in the past. I'm not going to go over it again. But then Russia tried for years to explain why that was a really bad idea from their perspective
Hmm.
and finally gave up when Biden refused to even discuss it.
Yeah.
Now, again, I see people online saying this has nothing to do with NATO expansion. Yeah, it has everything to do with NATO expansion. There's more to it. There's oil and gas and natural mineral rights and all that kind of stuff. But
Hmm.
the number one factor is Russia didn't want enemy missile bases on their border, and they've been saying that for decades, and everyone's known that for decades,
Yeah.
except the people who haven't been paying attention.
Right.
But this whole idea about Putin has this imperialist worldview, it's not Putin that has 800 military bases around the world, people. It's the
Yeah.
US that has 800. Don't tell me the country with 800 military bases around the world is not the imperialist country. It's
Right.
they're the ones that have built an empire of military bases around the world in order to control the world.
Yeah.
Oh no, we're doing it to defend them. Aha, right. From who
Right.
exactly? Well, you never
You,
know.
you know.
Could be something.
Right.
Um, it's the US that overthrew the government of Ukraine twice, not
Hmm.
Russia. It's the
Yeah.
US.
Mhm.
Um, as for people who say, but Ukraine has the right to join whatever organization it wants, sure, that's true if you live inside of a fairy tale. I mean,
Right. That's not how it works. Yeah.
it had a right not to have its government overthrown too, but the USA didn't care about that. Iraq had a right not to be invaded in 2003. Afghanistan had a right not to be invaded. Vietnam had a right not to be invaded. The people of Gaza had a right not to be subjected to a genocide by Israel, but the USA supported that anyway. The US doesn't give a damn about people's rights except when it's convenient to US interests.
Yeah.
So it's ridiculous to expect that Russia is the only one that needs to meet that standard. It's just a fairy tale. Look, I'm a geopolitical realist.
Hmm.
Russia was never going to allow a NATO base in Ukraine, and everyone has known that since Clinton came up with the idea to expand NATO in the mid 1990s. Lots of people, including Biden's CIA director, William Burns,
Yeah.
have been going on record for decades saying that provoking Russia by saying they were going to put NATO bases in Ukraine was going to be a huge mistake. Russia eventually was going to have to retaliate. Everyone knew that. They did it anyway.
Yeah.
And today, I'm going to explain why.
Yeah.
It's all about how foreign aid really works.
Before you jump into that, just two things I want to point out. One is that I'm sure because you've read more about this than I have. Remember how much the Americans and I'm kind of focused on the American audience on this show tonight. But remember how much the Americans freaked out when the Russians put missiles on Cuba, 60 miles off the coast. This would be right next. What we're doing now is we'd be putting, if Ukraine joins NATO, it's like right there touching Russian soil. I mean, it would be even worse than putting missiles in Cuba. So if we can kind of look at it from that perspective, we freaked out. Why wouldn't they freak out? And you're right. There's going to be a lot of on purpose misconceptions by the American people. We think we know more than what we do. We're too trusting of our sources just because we pick sides. So as we go through this, we're going to try to deconstruct a lot of things, and we're going to try to bring facts because, again, at the end of the day, that's the best we can do is bring facts. There's a lot of people in America who assume that we give away too much money, that if we didn't give away any money, we would somehow magically be able to clean up our own house. We're going to show that that's not true. And again, the numbers support that. But it's just something that's got to be, I guess people have to be re-educated in a way. And I don't mean that as condescending as it sounds, because unless you go and look for the truth and you just rely on your sources, you're only going to know what they tell you. And they're only going to want you to know what they tell you. So it's a cycle. And so we'll see what we can do about that tonight.
You were talking about missile bases in Cuba, and funnily
Yeah.
enough, Cuba is going to be a big part of what I talk about tonight. But
Right.
this whole idea of people freaking out about missile bases and NATO bases, one of the other arguments that I've continued to hear, and I've heard it for the last couple of years, when
Mm-hmm.
there's talking about NATO expansion, is, oh, well, NATO is a defensive organization. Now,
Right.
number one, that's not true. we've talked about why NATO was created.
Hmm.
NATO wasn't created, well, I guess it was created as a defensive organization, but it's not in the way that people think.
Hmm.
NATO, we did a long series on NATO. NATO was created to protect America's investment in Western Europe after World War II,
Right.
basically sunk $13 billion of funding, which we'll go into in a little bit, into
Right.
Western Europe. But Western Europe had to sign up to not allowing any socialist organization in their country to exist
Hmm.
in order to get those funds,
It was
because
conditional. Yeah.
America didn't want to sink all this money to Europe and then just have the socialists take it.
Right.
And Europe, after World War II, said, well, we can't guarantee that because we're broke and we got nothing. You need
Right.
to provide security guarantees. You need to step up and defend your own money. And
Hmm.
America went, no, we don't want to do that. And then eventually they got convinced that it was probably the best plan. So it
Right.
was there to defend America's investment in Europe after World War II. But then in the 90s, NATO attacked Yugoslavia, got
Yeah.
involved in attacking Milosevic. That's not defensive. They weren't attacking a NATO country. It was an aggression. It was NATO aggression outside of the UNSC. So that's not true for a start. And secondly, okay, you got to understand how Putin thinks about NATO. They go, well, it's defensive. Putin's viewpoint is, okay, so what if one of the NATO countries attacks Russia
Hmm.
and then we try and defend ourselves and you
Don't
have
you dare.
missile bases on our border? Like,
Right.
he's like, fuck off with that argument. That makes no sense to us whatsoever. If
Yeah.
you have us surrounded by missile bases and then you attack us, we're fucked.
Yeah.
So, and he's seen a whole bunch of regime change operations the US have been conducting since 2001. You know, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Egypt, etc., etc.
Hmm.
So Gaza now through proxies, Yemen. Like, he's not just going to sit there and let that happen to him.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about foreign aid because a lot of this is tied up in how foreign aid works, how it really works versus how people think it works.
Right.
Obviously, there's been lots of discussion in the media recently about foreign aid because Trump and Musk are culling US aid.
Hmm.
Trump administration said at the end of February that it's freezing 90% of US aid's foreign aid contracts, leaving a few projects intact, but it's also recalling about 10,000 US aid staff from countries around the world. According to Reuters, hundreds of diplomats at the State Department and US Agency for International Development
Hmm.
have written a letter addressed to Secretary of State Marco Rubio protesting the dismantling of US aid, saying its demise would undermine US leadership and security and create a power vacuum which China and Russia could exploit.
Absolutely.
Foreign assistance is not charity. Instead, it is a strategic tool that stabilizes regions, prevents conflict, and advances US interests. And I would be bolding that last part there as well.
Well, there's nothing wrong with buying your friends, you know. I mean, and that's what a lot of it is. Just to give you an example, in 2023, when it comes to U.S. aid, we spent the budget for U.S. aid in 2023 was $40 billion. That sounds like a lot, but on the bigger stage, it's not. For last year, the American budget was 6.1 trillion. So 40 billion 6.1 trillion. It's not a lot of money, but like you said, I mean, and I'm just going to give some examples. It helps with health and family around the world, you know, population control, health. There's nothing wrong with that. Education, which we all agree is a good thing. It helps with the environment because I think clean air and clean water kind of important. And again, at the end of the day, it makes those regions where you sink money into it more susceptible, more open to your point of view. Again, there's nothing wrong with buying your friends. Everybody does it. We just have more money to do it with. And so if we do pull a lot of that out, you can best bet that China is going to step right in with their money and they're going to be their new friends. And then suddenly we're going to be frozen out. So again, it's just something that empires do. Don't get mad about it. Don't take it personally. It's just something that happens. And again, we just happen to have the money to do it. But if you start to pull it out, that vacuum will be filled, and it will not be filled by our allies. It's just the nature of the game of playing empire.
Okay. So, and why does that matter?
As far as us,
If the gap gets filled by somebody else.
yeah. Well, again, several reasons. As America gets more efficient with our ability to produce, as our population grows, we're going to need more and more markets outside of our own borders, and we need countries and governments to line up and to sign up, with deals or whatever. But if they are, how should I put this gently, beholden to China or to Russia or to some other country, maybe we get frozen out and suddenly we can't sell as much as we could have if we had the goodwill of those people. And I'm sorry, this is just the way the world works. You get a lot of goodwill with cash. You just do. I would do anything for money. We've talked about this. I'm not proud. But the point is, it's an investment in your own future. And as we're going to go through this, and I'm not going to get too far ahead, as we're going to go through this, the money that America puts out in various forms, we call it aid, but there's various forms, we get back so much more. And one of them is open markets, stable markets, and again, and possible allies if we need them in the future. It's just something you do, and it's an investment, just like anything else. And if we're not there, somebody else is going to do it.
Open markets, and then we'll put tariffs on them and say,
And then
you.
we'll take them off, and then we'll put them on, and then we'll take them
Yeah.
off. But that's a different conversation.
Look, anyone who's listened to us over the years knows my views on US aid. It's basically been used by the US government for regime change operations since
That
JFK
too.
created it in the early 60s.
Right.
But you're unlikely to hear anything about that in the media coverage of US aid.
That's the dirty
Uh,
side of it. Yeah.
yeah. For background, in 1961, Kennedy signed the Foreign Assistance Act, which then created US aid, but it was designed as a way to stop the Soviets from helping poor countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a US historian, Christian Ruth from University of Florida, who studies America's foreign relations history.
Right.
He says a well-known development economist, Walt Rostow, who served in Kennedy's administration, was among the experts who argued that the Soviet Union could easily influence poor countries in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. It was possible, Rostow argued, to help these countries grow their economies and become more modern,
Yeah.
meaning keep them out of the Soviet trading bloc.
Right.
So, as we've said many times on our Cold War show over the years, the Cold War was really a battle between economic blocs.
Mm-hmm.
It gets framed as a battle between ideologies, the good guys versus the bad guys. That's all propaganda and bullshit.
Right.
It was about two massive trading blocs. The old world trading blocs that the United Kingdom had, the French had, the Spanish had been destroyed between the late 1800s, the Spanish-American War, through to World War II. There's a period of 60 years when those old world trading blocs were essentially dismantled,
Yeah.
and the only countries really left in a position to build new trading blocs, the United States and the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a battle between these two trading blocs, and the US has been using US aid to covertly try and overthrow regimes who refuse to bend the knee to the US since the early 60s.
Right.
Now, they call it helping people exercise their fundamental rights and freedoms. But really, what it's about is covertly destabilizing governments and countries and economies where they're not fully part of the US trading bloc.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, it does do a lot of aid work, and that provides it with a legitimate front.
Exactly.
All, if you have a dry cleaning business that's really a front for money laundering for the mob, you also do dry cleaning.
You have to.
So if anyone, comes and walks through the front door and looks around, it looks like it's a dry cleaning business. But out the back,
Right.
Gus Fring is cooking meth in the basement, right? But it's not obvious when you walk through the front door that that's what's going on. It
You're right. You
does
gotta
do
look
aid
for it.
work. Aid work is good. I'm not saying aid work is bad. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not saying the Marshall Plan was inherently bad, but you have to understand what it was really doing, what the real purpose behind it was, if you want to understand how the world works. If you don't,
Yeah. Yeah.
shut your eyes and think happy thoughts. Um, the thing I find funny, though, about what's going on at the moment is if you listen to Trump and Musk talk
Hmm.
about this, again, I think shutting down US aid or curbing its activities is probably a good thing, um, but they're doing it for the wrong reasons. So they
Right.
say this is a quote. I can't tell if this is from Trump or Musk, but they're basically the same person. Talking about US aid, it's been run by a bunch of radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision. And it's
Hmm.
been supporting, quote, radically left causes throughout the world and including things that are anti American.
Right.
But here's the thing, that's the opposite of what's actually true.
Right.
It tends to get involved in covert regime change operations against leftist governments around the world.
Yes.
And because they're covert, we don't hear about most of them
Hmm.
unless they get leaked. And I've got one story I'll talk through to give you an example of the sort of stuff that USAID has been involved in recent years. I'm not talking about in the Cold War. I'm talking about
Right.
during the Obama years. I
Hmm.
think we've talked about this on a show a couple of years ago, but I'll go over it again.
Right.
This is oh, by the way, I just want to talk about this. Like, this sort of stuff is hard to find. Like, you won't see any of the mainstream media coverage about USAID right now. If you're reading the New York Times or Washington Post or the Guardian or whatever, you're not going to find stories about this talking about the dirty side of USAID. It's
Right.
just not
Yeah.
convenient for the current narrative. You have to go digging and looking and have a lot of time on your hands, like podcasters, to find this stuff. Anyway,
Right.
and have a big file. I have a big file. I keep files on all this kind of stuff, and
Hmm.
I've been keeping it for decades. But this is an article from The Guardian from 11 years ago, actually.
Hmm.
It's based on thousands of documents that were received by Associated Press. It says in 2010, US Aid started a social network called Zunzunio.
Okay.
It was basically a version of Twitter, and they created it to try and organize smart mobs to organize an Arab Spring, but in Cuba, a Cuban Spring.
Right.
Cuban Spring sounds lovely. I would love to spend spring in Cuba, smoke
Right.
cigars outside in the park, on the
Feel the
waterfront,
breeze. Yeah, with our Hawaiian
driving my
shirts. Oh, yeah.
Chevy from
Yeah.
1956. Yeah, sounds drinking rum. Sounds lovely, but not that kind of a Cuban Spring.
No. No.
Trying to overthrow the Cuban government. Now, I'm
Yeah.
going to read just quotes. This is a very, very long article. I'm just going to read some sections of it that I cherry picked.
Right.
Their mission to launch a messaging network that could reach hundreds of thousands of Cubans. To hide the network from the Cuban government, they would set up a Byzantine system of front companies using a Cayman Islands bank account and recruit unsuspecting executives who would not be told of the company's ties to the US government.
Mm.
This was a program paid for and run by the US Agency for International Development, best known for overseeing billions of dollars in US humanitarian aid. According to documents obtained by the Associated Press and multiple interviews with people involved in the project, the plan was to develop a bare bones Cuban Twitter using cell phone text messaging to evade Cuba's strict control of information and its stranglehold restrictions over the internet. In a play on Twitter, it was called Zunzunio, slang for a Cuban hummingbird's tweet. Isn't
Oh,
that nice?
that's very
Sounds so
nice.
lovely.
Oh.
Documents show the US government planned to build a subscriber base through non controversial content: news, messages on soccer, music, and hurricane updates. Could have used that where I'm living right now. Later, when the network reached a critical mass of subscribers, perhaps hundreds of thousands, operators would introduce political content aimed at
Mm.
inspiring Cubans to organize smart mobs, mass gatherings called at a moment's notice that might trigger a Cuban spring, or, as one USA document put it, renegotiate the balance of power between the state and society. The
Oh.
program's legality is unclear. US law requires that any covert action by a federal agency must have a presidential authorization. Officials at USAID would not say who had approved the program or whether the White House was aware of it. It is unclear whether the plan got its start with USAID or Creative Associates International, a Washington for profit company that has earned hundreds of millions of dollars in US contracts. But a
Mm.
key contact at Cubacell, the state owned cell phone provider, slipped the phone numbers to a Cuban engineer living in Spain. The engineer provided the numbers to USAID and Creative Associates free of charge, documents show.
Right.
USAID documents say their strategic objective in Cuba was to push it out of a stalemate through tactical and temporary initiatives and get the transition process going again towards democratic change. Democratic change in authoritarian Cuba meant breaking the Castro's grip on power. The money the Creative Associates spent on Zunzunio was publicly earmarked for an unspecified project in Pakistan, government
Sh-
data shows.
Sure.
But there is no indication of where the funds were actually spent. Tensions with Congress spiked just as the Zunio project was gearing up in December 2009, when another USAID program ended in the arrest of the US contractor Alan Gross. Gross had
Ooh.
traveled repeatedly to Cuba on a secret mission to expand internet access using sensitive technology typically available only to governments, a mission first revealed in February 2012 by AP. To cover their tracks, they decided to have a company based in the United Kingdom set up by a corporation in Spain to run Zunzunio. A separate company called Movilchat was created in the Cayman Islands, a well-known offshore tax haven, with an account at the island's Bank of NT Butterfield and Son Limited to pay the bills. A memo of the meeting in Barcelona says that the front companies would distance Zunzunio from any US ownership so that the money trail will not trace back to America. USAID was paying tens of thousands of dollars in text messaging fees to Cuba's communist telecommunications monopoly, routed through a secret bank account and front companies.
Mm.
It was not a situation that it could either afford or justify, and if exposed, it would be embarrassing or worse. In
Right.
a searing evaluation, Creative Associates said Mobile Accord had ignored sustainability bec- because it had felt comfortable
Mm.
receiving USG financing to move the venture forward. USAID says the program ended when the money ran out.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just real quick, this reminds me of going back to your dry cleaning front metaphor. I imagine when the CIA heard that someone might possibly do anything to USAID, much less shut it down, the CIA's got to be going, no, because like you said, that's the legitimate mask that they can funnel, the money through all these things. And again, in a way, it's good. The net result is it's good because it's going to limit what the CIA can do. But again, I think you're right. In a lot of ways, Trump is doing something overall that's net good, but he's doing it for, he doesn't even understand. I really think what he's doing. He's just trying to, I don't know, maybe cut some money so they can afford the tax cuts for the rich people. But the point is, yeah, this is just one of the many masks that the CIA has, and they're being hurt by their own president.
It's not clear to me how much involvement there is between USAID's covert operations and the CIA. I mean, you have to think that they're
There's got to
sitting down
be
and talking, so there's no
right,
overlap. But
right,
government agencies also tend to run off and do their own thing. And
yeah,
I just read a
yeah,
great John le Carre book recently, The Looking Glass War. It was, I think, his third novel, and
mm-hmm.
it's basically about that. It's about some sort of tier two British intelligence agency that is sort of an afterthought, behind MI5 and MI6, and it sees an opportunity to run a covert operation in East Germany, and it goes off and it gets excited, and
Yeah.
like half of the no, 2/3 of the book is about these guys, these sort of second-rate intelligence bureaucrats, g- um, getting all excited about running this operation, and they spend the whole book preparing for it and executing it, and then their guy gets captured like in the first couple of hours, and it all
Oh,
then they have to pull out, and everything goes to hell in a handbasket, and it gets exposed, and it's going to be a diplomatic incident,
oh
and
my
they're all like,
God.
"Oh shit!" and
That's,
and and then then Smiley, who's like works for MI6 control, as they call it, has to come in and basically pull them out and go, guys, nice
kind
try.
yeah.
Pats them
Yeah.
on the back. Yeah, yeah.
Amateurs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You did good. All right, everyone, get back to England, kind of thing.
Leave
Um,
it to the professionals. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's really really bleak book. Um, but look, so the point of telling this story is a couple of things. Number one, USAID wasn't running a leftist operation here. It was uh, running a rightist operation. They were
Yeah.
trying to overthrow a leftist government. Secondly, we only found out about this by accident, as it says, because another guy got captured and then stuff got leaked.
Right.
But all of these front companies that they're running, this is why we don't know about most of this stuff. This is a covert operation with different fronts and different organizations and funding being
Layers. Yes.
USAID money earmarked for Pakistan, which
Yeah.
is ending up in Spain and the Cayman Islands and the UK to
Sure.
run an operation in
Sure.
Cuba.
Yeah.
So it's like classical dirty stuff. And this wasn't the Republicans. This was the Democrats doing this. This was, well, Obama era stuff where this is all
Hmm.
happening.
Right.
Um, and Obama was supposedly loosening the restrictions with Cuba and loosening some of the sanctions and that kind
I
of
remember
stuff.
that. Yeah.
But covertly behind the scenes, and again, we
Hey.
don't know how much the White House knew about this. USAID is running this regime change, destabilizing. We did the whole series on Iran, 1953, how the CIA went in and destabilized the Mossadegh government,
Hmm.
and then sort of accused Mossadegh of being involved with communists, etc., etc. But really, the US was destabilizing the country, not the communists.
Right.
Same sort of thing they're trying to do here. So this is how USAID gets work. But as I said, they also actually do aid. They
Yeah.
actually do provide food and medical support and educational support and that kind of stuff. But it's largely a front for the covert operations that are happening and was set up deliberately to do that. It's all that stuff you talked about before, soft power, making
Right.
friends so they like you and they want to do stuff with you. That's part of it. The other
Absolutely.
side of it is destabilizing countries. Now, people might go, well, destabilizing dictatorships, surely that's a good thing. We can argue about whether or not that's legitimate,
Right.
but when you destabilize a country, people die.
Yeah.
There tends
Chaos.
when you create a civil war,
Yeah.
people die. Infrastructure gets destroyed.
Hmm.
We've just in our Cold War. No, which series have we been doing where we've been talking about Cuba? Cold War. Yeah, we've been
Yeah.
talking about the Cuban Revolution, late 1800s, early 1900s, the
Hmm.
first Cuban Revolution, the Spanish American War. America gets involved and then takes over the country. But, people died. The entire
Yes.
infrastructure of the country got destroyed and took years and years and years and years to rebuild. So going in and destabilizing countries is not a good thing to do for the people in that country. Particularly, there's lots of quotes from Cubans who were customers of Zunzunio or using it in that article,
Right.
and they're like, "We had no idea that it was, you know,
That's the
a
point.
U.S. government operation." Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, could I just say real quick? I think you can just look at America in the last 100 years when it comes to covert operations, CIA, whatever. I think in history will bear this out. America, the American government, if you will, not the American people. The American government feels quite more comfortable with right wing dictators than we do with anything centrist or left wing, because as the further left you go, it reminds us of communism, socialism, which takes our mentality right back to the Cold War, Stalin, and we get anxious. We don't do that. We don't like that. We pay lip service to be nice to everybody, but we feel more comfortable. And of course, Reagan was the pinnacle of dealing with the right wing, justifying it by saying, well, we're keeping communism down. So again, history will easily bear out that America when we do our operations, yeah, we're going after the left leaning because it smacks of something that we don't feel comfortable with. And so again, and I don't think that's changed yet.
Yeah, but it's got nothing to do with that. We've talked about the Kirkpatrick doctrine, Jeannie
Right.
Kirkpatrick
Yeah.
before, advisor to Reagan, and her philosophy, which was fully embraced by the Americans, was we support rightist dictatorships and authoritarian governments because we can do business with them.
Yeah.
We can't do business easily with leftist governments because they don't trust us and we don't trust them. We can do business with right-leaning dictatorships
Yeah. Because it's all about results.
yeah, they just care about doing business. That's why America
Ex-
favors rightist authoritarian governments, Saudi Arabia, et cetera, et cetera. Israel, they'll happy work with rightist dictatorships. But I
right.
want to talk more broadly about aid. So US aid is just one
Hmm.
mechanism for doing this, and one of the ways the US government uses foreign aid. The other kind of aid that's being talked about at the moment is aid to Ukraine. Obviously,
Ah,
Trump had Zelensky to the White House a week or so ago.
yeah.
I think it's fair to say did not go well for Zelensky. Probably was never
Right.
going to go well.
No, it was planned. Come on. It was planned.
But this is about how the military industrial complex works. We've talked about this many times over the years on this show, the Cold War show, but it's time for a refresher course, I think.
Right.
I still believe the role of the military industrial complex isn't well understood in the US or the West in general.
Hmm.
Um, and and that's because it's been deliberately engineered that way. The
Yes.
military industrial complex doesn't want you to understand how it works. It spends a lot of money on propaganda, a lot of money on obfuscation. And again, it's very, very like finding out about US aid's covert operations. It's very, very hard to get details on how the military industrial complex works, unless, like me, you're an expert on digging up dirt and you've got a file. It's a bit
Right.
like the a Catholic priest's predilection for little boys up until recent times. It was something that people didn't talk about it. It was
No,
been going on
it was
forever,
there. Yeah. Yeah. But
and you
we
could
don't talk about it.
find rumors, but trying to get details on it in the mainstream press up until shit went down in the last, say, 10 years, it was very, very hard to get confirmation and evidence of that for a long time.
Right.
In terms of the military industrial complex and the way it really works, they don't tend to write books about it. Because if you're an author and you took a manuscript about this to most publishers, they're going to go, well, we're not
New,
mainstream
new.
publishers. We're not printing this. This would get us in
Yeah.
lots of trouble.
Exactly.
New York Times, Washington Post tend not to write articles about it. Journalist goes to them with something like this. They're like, we're not printing that. Are you crazy? We'll get into all
Cut my
sorts of
own
trouble.
throat. Yeah. Forget
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
But they do from time to time. You
Hmm.
just need to know where to look and to be
Right.
patient and to keep a file.
Yeah.
So let me give you some examples. I think a lot of people still don't understand that a large percentage of foreign aid,
Hmm. I like the air quotes.
90% of
Right.
foreign aid
Right.
that the US gives to countries never actually leaves the US.
Exactly.
This goes right back to the Marshall Plan. We've talked about this on the Cold War show.
Hmm.
Most of the Marshall Plan money never left the US.
Right.
In most cases, foreign aid, and this is true today with situations like Ukraine in the last couple of years,
Mhm.
What they call foreign aid, I think most people think when they say we're giving aid, they just put pallets of cash on a plane and they fly it over to Ukraine and say, here's lots of
Saran
money.
wrap. Yeah, saran wrap
Yeah,
and ship it
yeah.
there. Yeah. No.
Which Bush did do
Right.
in
Well, but
Iraq,
Iraq is a different. Yeah, yeah. They love cash, so we sent them pallets of cash. Sorry, go ahead.
which then completely disappeared when it arrived in Iraq.
Yeah.
And when they tried to do an audit on it years later, what happened to those
Yeah.
billions of dollars in cash we
Yeah.
sent over?
Yeah.
The guy who was running Iraq was like,
Hi, Tim.
don't ask me
Mm,
what happened to the cash. And we were busy. I don't remember.
yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
remember,
I
Senator,
went
what
to
happened to the cash.
I went to have lunch. I came back. The pallet and the saran wrap were still here. I mean, I've got
Yeah.
piles of that,
Yeah.
but the cash is. I don't know. I don't know.
In most cases, foreign aid
Right.
works as a line of credit
A big one.
to buy American goods and services,
Yeah.
or it's an in-kind contribution. It's
Mm,
like when I give one of my sons my old MacBook,
right.
that's aid. I'm
Yeah.
giving you my 5-year-old MacBook because I can't use it, but I can't use it anymore. It's too slow. It won't run the. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to call it aid. It's worth about $200 on eBay, but
Right.
I'm going to say it's worth $5,000
Because I can.
because that's what it's going to cost me to buy a new one.
I
So
like that.
I'm going to call it $5,000 worth of child aid.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give you my own laptop. I'm going to get the money.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy myself a new laptop and I'm going to give you the old laptop, but just say it's $5,000 worth of aid.
Right.
That's how it works with weapons. So the US and their NATO allies are sitting on all of these weapons that they haven't been able to use because they
Yeah.
haven't bombed anybody for 20 years with the NATO stuff. It's getting, they want to buy new shit. Manufacturers, Lockheed Martin, etc., are making new shit. They're going, hey, buy our new
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah. We got new
They
stuff.
go, okay, well, we'll give the old shit to Ukraine and then
Right.
we can buy new shit. But we're going to call it foreign aid. It's really just giving us money to buy new shit and we just send the old shit on a plane over to you or on a ship over to you and
Right.
you can have it.
And if I
So,
could, real quick, that's
yeah.
only one of at least three, but quite possibly four ways that, and I'm going to do that because I love the way you did it. Foreign aid helps the American economy and the American worker. We're going to get to that, but that is the most obvious. Again, once you do some research, but that is only the tip of the iceberg, and we'll get to some more of those. But again, and like you've made this comment several times over the years. It's like throwing a stone into a pond and the ripples go out. There are so many other economic advantages specifically for Americans when it comes to foreign aid, but we'll get to that.
So the way that this aid works is that the money goes from the US taxpayer,
Hmm.
and the majority of the US budget comes from the US taxpayer.
Right.
It goes from the US taxpayer to the US Treasury. Then it goes from the US Treasury to the Pentagon and then straight to US manufacturers
Hmm.
to buy new stuff for the US military. And the old stuff that they want to get rid of, they just stick on a plane or on a ship and they ship it over to wherever. But
Right.
it's easy money for US manufacturers. The money they just get a siphon of like billions and billions of dollars
Hmm.
hitting their bank accounts. It's like, woohoo!
Yeah.
The Marshall Plan again set the template for this. It's called military Keynesianism, if you want to look it up. Um, you know, Keynes was an economist during FDR's years. The
Hmm.
US economy had been struggling, Great Depression, etc., etc. Keynes said, you know what? If the government just created a whole bunch of money and used it to militarize the economy, that money would trickle down into the economy
Yeah.
and it would rescue the economy.
Yeah.
So they did that during World War II, ramped up the military, decided eventually, oh, we should get involved in this war thing that's going on.
Hmm.
We'll just justify some reason. Oh, okay, yeah, Japan attacked us in Pearl Harbor. I guess we'll just use that as a justification. They were retaliating, but sure, we'll say that they started it. Who's going to know? Um, and World War II ended, and then Truman started to wind back the military budget, and whole bunch of people went, whoa, whoa, whoa,
Oh,
whoa,
whoa.
whoa, 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 whoa,
Don't
whoa,
cut
what
off the
happened to the
tap,
money?
son.
Where's the
Yeah, yeah,
money?
yeah, yeah.
Where's the money, honey?
Keep it flowing, baby. Keep it flowing.
And he
Yeah,
goes, well, we're not at war anymore. And they're like, well, what about there could be another one.
there
There
could
could be
be.
another one. And look at the
Exactly.
Soviets. Well, they
You got to
might
be
attack
ready.
us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they ramped it back up again.
Yeah.
And this is why the US has had to find a Bond villain enemy on average every decade or so.
Yeah.
It keeps the US economy running.
Literally.
Um, it basically funds a large percentage of the US economy.
Yeah.
The trickle down effects, as you mentioned, of military industrial complex spending.
Mhm.
It's also, by the way, getting rid of old weapons by sending them off to another country
That's one of
saves
the
the
ways.
US money because it
Yes.
saves you don't have to decommission carefully
Which is
old
expensive.
tanks and old
Exactly. You
bombs
just ship them out.
to get blown up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, it'll just litter the fields of Ukraine, and then that's their problem.
Right. It's not ours. Yeah. And again, this is just one of the other ways we get rid of older equipment because one of the weapons developers goes, hey, it's been 5 years or 10 years or whatever. We've got some new amazing shit you wouldn't believe, but we don't have any money for it or whatever. Let's ship out the old. And now we have to, and that's what we did when on February 24th, 2022, when Russia invaded, we just shipped them a lot of our stuff that we currently had in stock that had to be replaced. It wasn't going to be replaced with what we had. It's going to be replaced with something newer, something better, something more expensive. But again, it's one of the many ways that America benefits is because we get the latest and greatest of whatever: fighters, tanks, artillery, weapon systems, whatever. But it's just one of the many ways that we benefit from another country being at war. That's just the way it works.
Yeah. And as with my laptop example earlier,
Mm-hmm. Right.
the value of the aid is assessed by how much it costs to replace what we're giving
Yes.
away at full tag, full
Because
cost.
you have to pay for the new laptop.
Yeah.
So that's why wouldn't you
Yeah.
label it that? Because anyway, tax
Yeah.
purposes. Go ahead.
Now, in some cases, actual cash is provided.
Mm-hmm.
When it is, it's usually a loan that has to be repaid, right?
Yeah.
Over a period of time. Or another way that it is dealt with is it's some sort of quid pro quo. For example, Trump's demand for $500 billion worth of mineral rights in Ukraine.
Right.
Now, by the way, that's largely what the Ukraine proxy war has been about. And the reason the US overthrew the government of Ukraine twice was, I believe, largely so the US could get its hands on Ukraine's underlying natural resources.
Right.
And also it was to sort of destabilize Russia's economic interests with Europe. Russia was supplying Europe with a lot of oil and gas, and US and US allies wanted to get that business. They couldn't compete with it in normal ways. So the best way to do it was to provoke Russia into a war by saying, we're going to build military bases on your border. Once the war started, you could put sanctions on Russia, force European countries to put sanctions on Russia. Now you can't buy Russian oil and gas. Who are you going to buy from? Well, there was all these news stories. I remember we talked about it in 2022. American companies magnanimously step up to provide oil and gas to Europe now that they can't buy Russian oil and gas anymore. So magnanimous. So generous.
We're here to help. We're here to
them.
help.
Yeah.
And if we could take it one more step, if Russia does rattle the saber, those countries don't want to buy it from Russia. Forget not being allowed to. They don't want to now. I mean, again, it's It's brilliant. It's so layered. It's so nuanced, and it is brilliant.
Now, in case you don't believe me about how this aid works, I got some quotes that I'm going to pull out because I know there'll be some people going, "Oh, you're just making all this up."
Right.
According to the Council of Foreign Relations, in an article from late 2024 called "How Much U.S. Aid is Going to Ukraine,"
Mm-hmm.
a large share of the money in the aid bills is spent in the United States, paying for American factories and workers to produce the various weapons that are either shipped to Ukraine or that replenish the US weapons stocks the Pentagon has drawn on during the war. One
Right.
analysis by the American Enterprise Institute found that Ukraine aid is funding defense manufacturing in more than 70 US cities.
Damn. Yeah.
So, you're a senator or a congressperson from one of those 70 US cities.
Mm-hmm.
Are you happy? Are your constituents, business owners,
Yeah.
happy that money is flowing into their coffers because you're helping pass Ukraine war funding? Damn straight they are. If you're the senator or congressperson that's
Right.
supporting that, are you more likely to get campaign contributions?
From that.
Or a
Yeah.
post political position as the director of a board of a thing?
Right.
Probably, if
Yeah.
you've put billions of dollars into the pockets of your constituents over the years by
Yeah.
helping justifying war funding. It's the money goes from the US taxpayer to the treasury, from the treasury to the Pentagon, from the Pentagon to the manufacturer to the politician, rinse and repeat, rinse and
Right.
repeat, rinse and repeat.
And the other thing is, if I was the politician, I would be bragging. I am the representative from Ohio or Pennsylvania, and I've got some specifics. We'll go into that later. I would love to announce a $300 million contract for our factories, a 600 million, and one of them is 1.5 billion, and that's for one state. So you're damn right. These people would, as much as they can, would howl to the moon. I am bringing jobs to our great state of fill in the blank here. It's win-win. So again, we can keep saying foreign aid, but by the time I finished reading some of these articles, to me it was more like American economic aid with a little bit of Ukrainian aid on the side, like a little serving dish. Which really does benefit us
Yeah,
economically.
that's the reason it operates this way.
Yeah.
Here's a Washington Post article from 2023 called Ukraine Aid's Best Kept Secret. Most of the money stays in the USA.
Right.
Here is the best kept secret about US military aid to Ukraine. Most of the money is being spent here in the United States. That's right. Funds that lawmakers approved to arm Ukraine are not going directly to Ukraine, but are being used stateside to build new weapons or to replace weapons sent to Kiev from US stockpiles. Of the
Mm.
$68 billion in military and related assistance Congress has approved since Russia invaded Ukraine, almost 90% is going to Americans, one analysis found.
Wow. That's yeah, not 50%, not 60%. The vast majority of it is staying here. It's being spent here. And of course, it ripples out into taxes and everything else. So local school systems benefit because if you know anything about these jobs, these people are not making minimum wage. They are making great salaries, building tanks, building fighters, building shells, millions and millions of bullets. Again, it just spreads out. The benefits just spread out from point zero.
Right. Now, now I'm going to explain why Trump and Musk are trying to shut a lot of this down.
Okay.
Because Trump and Musk don't rely on the military industrial complex to survive.
True.
Trump doesn't own manufacturing businesses.
Mm,
Trump isn't involved in businesses that profit from the military industrial complex. Trump's
right.
a real estate mogul slash reality TV star.
And coin meme, but go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And Trump University and Trump Steaks.
And sneakers. Sorry. Go ahead.
Trump doesn't get any of this money,
Yeah.
but lots of politicians in America do end up with a lot of this money and their constituents.
Right.
So by pulling a lot of this aid, it's not hurting Trump directly. It's hurting
Hmm.
a lot of politicians. They're going to be upset. So this is going to cause problems for them. Trump doesn't give a shit about that, right?
He's not running again. He's done.
If they are politicians that he likes, whose constituents are unhappy, he can go, oh, we'll switch that one back on and we'll switch that one back on and we'll allow this one, right?
Right.
But he can pull, and again, Musk's companies, SpaceX, Tesla, have profited a lot from US government contracts, NASA contracts, DoD contracts, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
he does get funding from this.
Mhm.
So you can be damn sure that anything that's providing money to Musk's businesses will be continued to allowed to operate.
Right.
But a lot of his competitors also get funding from these
Yeah.
things. So they're going to be cut off, you can be damn sure.
Mhm.
Including, companies like OpenAI, Department of Defense contracts for AI research. He's now, and of course, Musk is basically the president. So he was getting, Trump was in Musk was in a situation under the Biden administration where he was getting money out of the government, but he was also getting regulatory oversight from the Biden administration.
Right.
So his whole thing is to get rid of the regulatory oversight because it's slowing him down,
Mhm.
punish his competitors by cancelling any projects that they're making money from, but at the same time ramping up contracts that are going to create profits or revenue or support for his businesses. So
Right.
it's very, very simple, mathematics from Musk's perspective right now.
Right.
So the reason why a lot of the politicians, mostly the Democrats, but also all the non-MAGA Republicans, are pissed off about a lot of the stuff that Trump and Musk are doing is because it's destabilizing the nice little system that
Status
they've
quo.
built up over
Yes.
decades, right?
Yes. All those relationships. Yes.
All those relationships, the money trail, again, taxpayer, treasury, Pentagon, businesses, politicians,
Politician
rinse and
for
repeat.
he runs for re-election. Use it, boom, keep it going.
Trump and Musk they don't feed off of that system. It's a mafia
Right.
system, it's
Yeah.
basically it's basically
big one.
organized crime writ large.
Right. With nicer suits.
Yeah,
Right.
and justified, legal
Exactly.
organized crime.
Exactly.
They've got their own organized crime racket. These are two organized crime rackets fighting each other.
Right.
Yeah, that's what's going on. So that's why, Trump doesn't care about dismantling this stuff because it's not his racket. He's got a whole other racket and he cares about his racket, which is real estate deals. So building the Riviera in Gaza with Trump hotels,
Can't wait to go.
building hotels in Russia, building
Right.
hotels in Ukraine. And you need to have peace in Ukraine to build hotels in Ukraine. So he'll be building hotels in Ukraine, going to have the loveliest hotels, Trump Kiev, or Trump Hotel Kiev, whatever it is.
Exactly. Exactly. Just a quick question: if they ever settle all of this stuff, and you could travel to Russia, would you go? My luck, I'd be the one American that gets a kidnapped just to be a political pawn because I'm a semi well known, not really a podcaster, and they could get several generals for me. But that would be my luck. I don't know if I would ever trust going to Russia again, which is a shame because I would love to go for its history. But I was just wondering, would you ever go there?
Totally.
Again.
I'd love to go to Russia. I'm reading a whole handful of books at the moment on Russia set around the 1920s. I'm reading one of the classic comedies written in the 20s. It's called The 12 Chairs. Don't know if you've ever seen the Mel Brooks film based on a book, but
No.
it's a sort of it's a dark comedy set in the early to mid 1920s.
Right.
Written during then too. And then I'm reading a book by Victor Serge, who was a Bolshevik, sort of a French anarchist who joined the Bolsheviks, Russian French guy, was very friendly with Trotsky. One of his books, Year One of the Revolution, which I'm reading at the moment, which actually starts in the late 1900s, talks about the revolutionary movements of the late 1800s, sorry.
Right.
And going through to the early 1900s. I was just reading about the 1905 revolution last night. He's sort of telling the whole story. So yeah, I'm fascinated by Russian history and the whole story.
Yeah.
I know the Russian story going back sort of the Napoleon years,
Mm,
through to the Cold War years and the Putin years. Like it's a fabulous tale.
yes.
Anyway, I want to talk about again getting back to aid and how it works. So there's this concepts of tied aid and untied aid when you start
Okay.
getting into how foreign aid works.
Right.
Tied aid refers to aid that is tied to using the goods and services from the donor country. And that's how most aid has worked.
Right.
Because most aid is designed to serve the interests of the donor country. In practical terms, this means food aid and all contractors and all vehicles used to implement aid have to be imported from the country that's providing the aid. So
Gotcha.
again, it's a line of credit to get goods and services, but you have to get them from us.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
we're going to provide money to our people to provide you with stuff.
You're welcome.
Under the Foreign Assistance Act of 1961 that Kennedy signed, I mentioned earlier, if a
Hmm.
USAID mission wants to purchase goods or services locally, it has to get a waiver
Ah,
on a
yeah.
case by case basis.
That's a lot of
So
cases.
many countries tie their aid, but the United States has tied more of their aid than any other donor country since the Foreign Assistance Act was created.
Right.
Now, that's obviously incredibly inefficient. If you're having to ship food and
Yes.
goods and services halfway
Yes.
around the world, it's inefficient. It's not cost effective. It's not quick,
Right.
which is why it always takes a long time to get aid to these countries. But that's just the way that it's designed to work. It's not designed to be effective. It's designed to bolster the US economy,
Exactly.
right?
Yes. Because if you were truly trying to help a region, you would think buying from them locally would not, you not only are you there providing stability, you're also stimulating their economy. How would that not be a good thing? But like you said, that's not what it's about. It's about a transfer of wealth from the people to the rich. And then the workers get a little bit at the end. But no, it's a transfer of wealth to the rich. But it's all dressed up in patriotism and
Yeah.
humanitarianism.
And a humanitarian, right?
Yeah.
When US development aid is provided to an overseas country, it has to be implemented by US companies using US consultants and US
Right.
goods.
Yes.
Like it's all about driving US economic upside.
Yeah.
And most of the value of that aid then flows back into the US, not into the country that it's supposedly aiding.
Right.
US food aid is tied. It has to be purchased and packaged in the US, and 75% of it has to be shipped on US carriers. The
Mm.
transport of it is particularly expensive, of course.
Right.
As a result, transportation, not the food itself, but transportation of the food eats up to 65% of the budget for US food aid.
Damn. We should open a shipping company and just get us a couple of contracts. We'll be set for life. Sorry. Sorry. Go ahead.
And because it's tied to US transportation, it takes 4 to 6 months to get it to, you know,
Wherever. Yeah.
remote countries that need the food. Whereas quite often there are neighboring countries that have the same crops that can provide it faster and cheaper, but
Right.
the
Nope.
countries can't get that. They've got to wait for it to be sent from the United States.
Priorities.
Technical assistance from the US is usually coordinated with the country's programs 53% of the time. Um, the recipient country is left with aid that is really diluted. It's
Mm.
not really effective. And there have been study after study after study for decades showing that foreign aid doesn't help.
Right.
I'll get into that in a second. But it's
Mm.
really just, it's self-serving. In fact, I've got a quote from a Ugandan person here. USAID is notorious for using US inputs, especially consultants. All the money goes home is a popular saying with USAID. That's
Right.
from a Ugandan responding to a survey about aid donors.
Right. Could I just say real quick? That reminds me, and I haven't seen it because I haven't watched regular television in years. But there used to be those commercials like Sally Struthers and others who were like talking about AIDS, and they would go something like 91 cents of every dollar goes to because by then people are starting to catch on to things, and they're letting you know that they're uber efficient. There's a good chance, based on what we know because of the articles we read, that's total bullshit. But again, it's a great selling point. Just know that you're not being ripped off, and most of the money you give is helping whoever. And again, it's just bullshit because you're right. It does cost a lot of money to get it from America to wherever when they could be buying it local. But it's just a small part of the scam.
Well, I think you're probably referring to different aid programs
Mm-hmm.
provided outside of the US government. I'm
Right.
talking about when the US government is providing aid
When
on
it
its
comes
own
from
behest.
exactly from American
Right.
soil, packaged up, sent over on American. Yeah, absolutely. It's self-serving.
Now, before the Ukraine war broke out, the country that had received the most aid from the
Ooh,
United States over the years, you want to take a
right.
guess who that would be?
I damn sure know it's not Canada. I think it's Israel.
Yes, that poor,
Okay.
starving African country, Israel.
Right.
They were getting about $3 billion a year for
Right.
decades.
Oh my
And
God.
most of that was provided as grants under what's called the Foreign Military Financing Program, FMF.
Right. Oh, I like that. Right.
Again, basically, it's a line of credit to buy US military equipment and services.
Yeah.
In October 2023, the Biden administration said Israel had nearly 600 active FMF cases, totaling around $24 billion.
Damn. Right.
So they were basically just getting
Shit tons.
shit tons of American weapons, not the old stuff, too. They
No.
get the good stuff.
Top of the line.
Yeah.
Top of the line. The best salami. Yeah. Jesus.
But again, this is the US providing the money to US manufacturers to make stuff that they then ship to Israel.
Exactly.
Uh, of course, Israel also buys a lot of American military stuff outside of the aid program.
Mm-hmm.
The top recipients of US arms sales in recent years, number one is Saudi Arabia, number two is Israel. Then you go Japan, Taiwan, Australia,
Mm.
South Korea, Egypt, Qatar, United Kingdom, and the United Arab Emirates.
Our allies, if you will.
Yeah. So, of course, that's another big part of why we do aid.
Right.
It's to support our allies, in this case, Israel.
Yes.
Okay, so getting back to quoting stuff so people don't think I'm making all this up, I found this buried on congress.gov,
Mm-hmm.
a 2024 article by the Congressional Research Service called Foreign Assistance, Where Does the Money Go?
Mm.
It is often especially unclear whether aid is provided primarily in the form of goods, services, or cash. In the absence of such details, policymakers and the public may be unaware of what aid dollars actually provide to targeted communities overseas.
Right.
Now, I want to stop and just point out that the Congressional Research Service says it's hard to figure out where all the money goes.
Look, I know this is an in-house thing, and you think we'd be able to put our finger right on it, but I gotta tell you, remember that scene in Indiana Jones with the big warehouse and all those crates? It's kind of like that. It's here somewhere. I just don't know where it's at.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
And when they sent
Yeah.
those billions of dollars over to Iraq after the
Yeah.
invasion and the rebuilding of Iraq, they
What are
would
you
do
gonna do?
audits.
What are you
Where'd the
gonna do?
money go? We don't ask. It's not our job. And
I know where it's
literally,
not. Sorry. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, there are literally quotes, and you go through this stuff when
Right.
they interview aid organizations and say, "Where does the money go?" They will literally say, "Look, our job is to get rid of the money. Our
Right.
job isn't track where it goes. It's just to get
Transportation.
rid of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm the truck driver. Okay, I'm the boat driver. Whatever. Once I'm there, hell no, I couldn't tell you.
Back to the congressional article.
Right.
Most agencies provide US foreign assistance through implementing partners.
Oh,
Few foreign governments receive direct budget support, and some foreign assistance dollars never leave the United States at all,
right.
instead going to a US business for the end benefit of a foreign population. Money
Mm,
goes to US farmers, defense contractors, and management consultants, among others, for commodities or services provided to benefit foreign populations.
that's
From
nice.
1962 to 1988, loans represented 28% of total US economic foreign assistance.
Right.
Since 1988, Congress and the executive branch have shifted away from lending toward primarily grant based assistance,
Mm,
viewing loans as contributing to already burdensome debt levels among aid recipients. There has been some recent renewed interest in converting grant based budget support to loans, with an FY 2024 aid package to Ukraine requiring budget support through a loan rather than a grant. More frequently, since the end of the Cold War, US aid has provided financing to governments through loan guarantees rather than direct loans. Loan
mm,
guarantees are a commitment to repay all or part of a loan in the event a borrower stops repayments.
right. We want that money back. Yeah.
Right. So, the way this works here with loans or loan guarantees, it's still the money is going directly to US manufacturers or US farmers or whatever it is.
Right.
It's just like you need to pay us back for that. We'll make sure you get the stuff. We'll transfer the money, but you'll have to
Yeah.
pay us back for that. But a lot
Yeah.
of the time, they say it's increasing the burden, but it's a lot of the time, no one cares about the money, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
The money is going where it needs to go, which is into the hands of US manufacturers and from the manufacturers eventually to the politicians. It's a wealth transfer. No one really cares if it gets paid back. It doesn't get paid back. At the end of the day, who gives a shit, right? It's
Yeah.
I got it. I don't care if it gets paid back or not.
What happens after? Well, see, for me, being the typical American, I could not tell you what the current U.S. debt deficit is. I do know that last year we paid $659 billion in interest. So is it 11 trillion? Is it 16 trillion? I have no idea, but you're right. It's like once the money's to me, we don't even think about the rest. But the point I wanted to make is once the debt is so high, it's just a number. It's an abstract. The fact that you're going to add on a little bit more doesn't really matter at this point. It should, but again, when you get with numbers this big, it's really hard to grasp the significance of them.
You don't really pay back the debt anyway.
No,
You
no, that's the
just
beauty. That's the beauty of it. Until
Yeah.
we pay so much in interest that it's actually more than what we bring, which is in the future. But hopefully, I won't be alive. But
But you don't even pay back the interest either. You just
we
raise
make
more money
right, right. We
and then
make
you
a
use that
payment.
you just funnel it. It's just a circle that goes around and
Yeah.
around and around.
Oh,
I mentioned that foreign aid doesn't work. And this is
right,
important to understand too. This is from the Cato Institute, an article called Foreign Aid and Economic Development. By
right.
the 1990s, the failure of conventional government to government aid schemes had been widely recognized and brought the entire foreign assistance process under scrutiny. For example, a Clinton administration task force conceded that despite decades of foreign assistance, most of Africa and parts of Latin America, Asia, and the Middle East are economically worse off today than they were 20 years ago.
Mm,
As early as 1989, a bipartisan task force of the House Foreign Affairs Committee concluded that US aid programs no longer either advance US interests abroad or promote economic development.
mm,
So, if that's true and everyone
right.
understands that, why do we keep
What?
doing it? Because it's not what it's about. It's not
Exactly.
about making the countries better. It's
Ooh,
about giving money to US manufacturers and US politicians. That's why
right.
foreign aid exists. it doesn't exist to help the countries.
Fuck
That's
them.
just that's
Yeah.
just the front.
Well, I
It's a
was going to
wealth
say,
transfer program. That's what it
not
exists for.
exactly, not only that, but this is where I truly get cynical. It continues the narrative that we are caring, compassionate people trying to, we are the greatest thing since sliced bread, and we're trying to help all you non Americans. It strokes the ego and it lines the pockets. Does it get any better than that?
I mean, I don't know whose ego you think it strokes. I mean,
All Americans, we
who
just think we're, come on, come on. It's like we, it's like,
Americans hate giving foreign aid. Apparently, that's why
well,
Trump's shutting it down.
that's the dichotomy of being American. We love the idea that we have it so well, we can help people. We just don't want to. So we could, but please cut foreign aid. Anyway, it's a very
More
complicated
from the
time.
Cato article. Despite record levels of lending, the multilateral development banks have not
Right.
achieved any more success at promoting economic growth than has the US Agency for International Development, USAID.
Mm,
Numerous self evaluations of World Bank performance over the years, for example, have uncovered high failure rates of bank financed projects.
yeah.
In 2000, the bipartisan Congressional Meltzer Commission found a 55 to 60% failure rate of World Bank projects based on the bank's own evaluations. A 1998 World Bank report concluded that aid agencies saw themselves as being primarily in the business of dishing out money, so it is not surprising that much aid went into poorly managed economies with little result. The
Right.
report also said that foreign aid had often been an unmitigated failure. No one who has seen the evidence on aid effectiveness, commented Oxford University economist Paul Collier in 1997, can honestly say that aid is currently achieving its objective. There is scarce evidence that the record of aid has improved in more recent years.
Look,
Again,
yeah,
everyone
yeah,
knows it doesn't work. Why do we do
right.
it? Because it's okay.
Part of the
So it's
system.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
And
Well,
and I'm going to yeah,
yeah,
I'm going to explain more here. So this Cato article, I'm
right.
going to finish this. Moreover,
Please.
while some corporations clearly benefit from the array of foreign assistance schemes, the US economy and American taxpayers do not. Subsidized loans and insurance programs amount to corporate welfare.
Mm,
Macroeconomic policies and conditions, not corporate welfare programs, affect factors such as the unemployment rate and the size of the trade deficit. Programs that benefit specific interest groups manage only to rearrange resources within the US economy and do so in a very wasteful manner. Indeed, the
right.
United States did not achieve and does not maintain its status as one of the world's largest exporters because of agencies like the Export Import Bank, which finances less than 0.5% of US exports. Even
Wow.
USAID has claimed that the main beneficiary of its lending is the United States because close to 80% of its contracts and grants go to American firms.
Right.
That argument is fallacious. To argue that aid helps the domestic economy, renowned economist Peter Bauer,
Mm,
explained,
right.
is like saying that a shopkeeper benefits from having his cash register burgled so long as the burglar spends part of the proceeds in his shop.
I like that.
So what he's saying is it doesn't help the overall US economy
Right.
because the money's being transferred from one part of it to another part of it. But it does help the parts of the economy that are getting the money transferred to it. Those
Exactly.
businesses and the politicians those businesses support
Right. They're
do
like,
benefit greatly out of it.
exactly.
Would
Exactly.
the money be better off being spent somewhere else, generally speaking? Probably.
Yes. Yes.
But that's not how it works.
Right. Well, we've said this before. You get power and then you get money. You get money and then you get more power. And then you and others like you build and entrench yourself in a system that, yes, it's very inefficient, but itself, it works for them. For someone to come from the outside and try to actually change that, you're not allowed into the country club. It's just going to keep going on. We all know it's not working, but we don't say it out loud to each other, and we just keep it going because the right people benefit. That's what capitalism is. And as far as those failure numbers, that reminds me of my dating time when I was younger. But you keep trying. You keep trying. What are you going to do? Stay home?
Reminds me of that Jim Carrey line from Dumb and Dumber.
What's that?
He says to her, "What are my chances of you going out on a date?" She goes, "They're not high." He goes, "So you're telling me there is a chance?"
It's all about point of view. Point of view.
Yeah. So you're
From a
telling
certain
me
point of view.
some of it works.
So there is a number. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to wrap up with this.
Okay.
Let me explain what I call the foreign aid shell game.
Okay.
And in places like Ukraine, it has multiple phases, and we've seen this play out in Iraq, in Afghanistan, etc., etc. But I'll explain to you the phases of the foreign aid shell game.
Okay.
Phase one: spend years or decades funding covert regime change operations in country X to create the conditions for a coup. That's where USAID and other organizations tend to get involved.
Right.
Phase two: have a coup. Make it look like it's a domestic citizen uprising, call it the Arab Spring or something like that.
Grassroots.
If we do a good job, even the citizens won't know we're behind it.
Ooh, I like that.
Because, like the Cuban Twitter operation I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
it's being run by so many front organizations.
Right. I thought
Unless
you.
everything gets leaked decades later, nobody knows who's really running it.
That's brilliant.
Citizens are always unhappy about something. If they aren't, our job is to make them unhappy about things, and we do that by causing problems, violence, economic problems through sanctions, etc., etc. Make the people happy. Tell them the reason they're unhappy is because their government is bad. Create a coup.
There you go.
Phase three: if the coup succeeds and we replace the existing government with one that is more friendly to our interests because we put them into power, we use them to start giving us all of the contracts to extract the wealth from their country: mining rights, development contracts, buy our products, buy our services, hire our consultants, our businesses, our banks, etc., etc.
Yeah.
We extract. Well, it's called colonial wealth extraction, right?
Right.
It's exactly the same way the colonial powers were doing it in the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. We're just doing it more covertly these days because people frown upon doing colonial stuff these days. We have to be a little bit more secret about how we do it.
There we go.
However, if the coup fails,
we
just go back to phase one and rinse and repeat. Okay.
Round robin.
Oh, look, this country just had a failed coup. They need lots of development aid. Let's send US aid in to provide them with support.
The Great White Father is here. Go ahead.
But if phase three succeeds, we move on to phase four, which is build military bases in country X.
Well, we got to protect them.
Well, it also helps keep their new government in power from their own citizens.
Right.
And it also protects them from neighboring countries that aren't happy with the fact that we just ran a coup in the country next to them and replaced a government that they had a good relationship with a government they now have an antagonistic relationship with. Phase five, we then fight a war to protect our coup government, either against their own citizens who eventually will rebel, revolt, there'll be a civil war, or we'll fight it against a foreign power, probably one of the countries on their border that aren't happy about the fact that we're now building military bases on their border.
Yeah.
We will have to provide lots of military funding to country X that we've taken over to support them against their own citizens or or against a foreign power. That's good. All of that money, we call that foreign aid, goes to that country to protect them. If we're lucky, we can covertly sell weapons to the other side as well. See Iraq-Iran conflict in the 1980s, if you want to see how that works. The US was funding Saddam Hussein to attack Iran, covertly funding Iran as well.
Keep it going. Yeah.
Yeah, through the Contra deals, covertly. Unfortunately, that all leaked. But people can look that up if they want to see how you fund both sides. It's good.
Yeah. Good business.
Phase six. So war breaks out, either a civil war or an international war. If our side wins, great. our country probably got destroyed during the war, all good.
Yeah. Yeah.
They will then buy our services to rebuild the country. We
Happy to
will
help.
provide consulting, manufacturing, construction services.
Hmm.
Again, all of that money stays in the US. We call it
Right.
foreign aid, but it's all
Yeah.
going to US contractors to go over there and rebuild it. If our side loses the Civil War or the International War, oh well, we got a good run out of it. We made money for 10, 20 years, however long
Right.
it lasted.
Right.
Um, and we just start again. Go back to phase
Yeah.
one, rinse and
Yeah.
repeat, or go find another country where we
Yeah.
do this and we start the process. We've probably been running phase one in 3 or 4 or 5 other countries concurrently with all of this
Yeah.
anyway.
See
So the
which one pops
conditions are
up.
ready,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
start all over
Yeah.
again. It's like
Level two.
startups. You have lots of startups, and then
I got
one of
ideas.
them will, If you won the war and you
Right.
defeated the other country,
Right.
can we exercise regime change in that country there
Oh my
too?
God.
Hopefully, and this is phase 7, we start all over again by building that country up with a friendly power, putting military bases in it that upsets its neighbors or its citizens, and we run the whole process again. If we lose, we go back to phase 1.
Right.
That's the foreign aid shell game. If you win, you win. If you lose, you win.
You win.
There,
Yeah.
there is no real losing. Like
Right.
in the Ukraine situation,
Hmm.
obviously it's over, bar the shouting now. People go, well, we lost. Well, did
Did
you?
we?
No,
Did we?
the Ukrainians lost.
Right. Yes.
The
Look at my bank account.
Ukrainians were always going to lose.
Yeah.
Everybody with half a brain knew that was going to
Yeah.
happen. As we talked about this on this show early on in the Ukraine war in 2022. We said that there were like 3 ways this can end.
Hmm.
Either Russia's going to lose or Ukraine's going to lose, or the US and its allies are going to eventually get sick and tired of the whole thing and they will pull out, in which case Ukraine will lose.
Right.
It was very unlikely that Russia was going to lose on the face of it. It didn't matter how long the US continued to fund the thing. Russia's just too big with too
Too
many
many.
people and too much
Exactly.
resources. And it had China to fall back on. It didn't even need to bring in China at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, if it needed it, China would have stepped in and probably supported Russia
Hmm.
directly. It
Right.
was the chances always were 95% that Ukraine
Yeah.
was going to lose this, either because it would just get completely crushed or because the US would end up giving up the ghost. I mean, I know the EU are still saying, "Well, we're going to hang in there." They're not going to hang in there.
Right.
They're going to give some speeches and they're going to do some stuff, but eventually they're going to toe the line.
Exactly.
So it was always going to be this way. People go, "Oh, well, we lost." No, well, but yes, but the people that got all of the funding, the hundreds of billions of dollars of funding, both out of the US and out of the EU, that have gone to US and EU manufacturers, because the
Hmm.
EU, foreign aid program works exactly the same way,
The smaller
just
scale.
for their countries,
Exactly. Exactly.
They profited out of this. It's war profiteering. The war profiteers always win when a war happens.
Exactly.
The people die,
Yeah.
but Ukraine will be rebuilt. The
Hmm.
parts of it that Russia controls will be rebuilt with Russian money and Russian resources by Russian
Hmm.
contractors.
Yeah.
The bits that Russia doesn't end up controlling will be rebuilt by the US and EU contractors, and they will profit out of
Yeah.
it. And it will be foreign aid. Oh, we need to rebuild Ukraine now.
Right.
Oh, we need to provide money to rebuild Ukraine.
We'll be there
And
for
it will
you.
go to US manufacturers or construction companies or whatever. So,
Yeah. The
and
perfect
we
model.
need to supply Ukraine with more weapons now because blah blah blah. Assuming that Ukraine manages to retain a pro-Western government, which honestly it probably won't. The Zelensky government will probably get kicked out once they start holding elections again. They'll
Yeah.
probably end up with a pro-Russian government, I think, in Kiev. and they will end up, going back to the way it was before the US overthrew the government there in 2004 in the first place. So anyway,
Yeah.
that is my take on the foreign aid shell game on US aid for what it's worth.
Yeah.
If people disagree with me, happy for them to write in as always and tell me where I'm
Yeah.
wrong and how I'm wrong. But
Poke holes. Yeah. Poke holes.
don't
Yeah.
bring a knife to a gunfight. Come prepared.
Exactly. You stole my